Ladies and gentlemen, now let me introduce and welcome our new speaker from Australia, Professor Kasia Gurgul. Today, she will be presenting about empowering women leaders in STEM. So everyone, please welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to check that you can hear me.
Yes, Miss, you can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for inviting me to share our research today from the Australian Institute of Marine Science. And I'll just start with sharing. Do you have the slides view available to you? Or do you need me to share my screen?
It's okay, sir. Professor, you can share it by yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So this project, I just want to introduce that this was a project that was carried out at the Australian Institute of Marine Science. It was carried out by Learning Partnerships, and the research was done by James Cook University. So I'll share with you a little bit about my background. Thank you, by the way, for calling me a doctor. I have to just tell you, I'm not a doctor or a professor, but I am working internationally with leaders around the world as a leadership coach, and I work with all levels of leaders, from frontline managers, aspiring leaders, to C-level executives. And this was an opportunity for me to be working with female scientists. My background is actually in the sciences. So it was a wonderful opportunity to come full circle and work with women in science. At the moment, we know that even in 2020, women are represented 30% of the workforce in science. So we are still doing a lot of work to encourage women to get involved in science, as well as to be interested in staying in science, because a lot of women leave the field when they have a family, when things become a little bit more challenging. Aside from science, I'm also working with a lot of large global technology organizations such as Amazon, Cisco, LinkedIn, Samsung. So I've had the opportunity to see how women are engaging, and this year, especially with COVID, there's been a lot of pressure. So I think that this is a topic that's still very relevant today, even though this research was done in 2013, quite a while ago. Things haven't changed that much, and we still need to be paying attention to how well women are supported. And so that's why I really wanted to share this today, even though it's a little bit older now. I think it's still very current to be informed about. I'm currently joining you actually from Vancouver Island, Canada. My normal place of residence is in Australia, but I've been here in Canada for over a year now. And I work across Asia Pacific, including Cambodia sometimes. So it's great to join you. So this is a picture of the Great Barrier Reef, because a lot of the female scientists that I was working with are working on the Great Barrier Reef. And to give you some context, sometimes they spend about 3 weeks on a boat actually researching, and they're not always available to be in an office. So our coaching sessions were done by phone, sometimes remotely onto their location in the boat. Some of them were done face-to-face, but a lot of the work that we did was virtual. So even though it was much earlier than during this pandemic, we were doing a lot of work virtually, and it was very, very effective and very helpful. So the Marine Science Institute is located in Townsville, Australia, in the north of Queensland. And this is where we conducted a lot of the workshops that were done face-to-face, and then the coaching side was done virtually. So this is just showing the beginning of the journey when we started. This is in front of the Australian Institute of Marine Science, the very first day that we were starting a workshop. And then the final stage was submitting this book chapter to coaching and mentoring in the Asia Pacific, which was published in 2018. And to let you know the other people that were involved here, just because I cannot claim to be responsible for all of this work that was done. The director and founder of Learning Partnerships was Sue Hubbard. Then David Pierce was the program creator, and Anna Blackman at James Cook University is the associate professor who actually did all of the research surveys for us. Normally, we don't actually have the pleasure of working with a university who is able to carry out this kind of research. So we are very happy to have Anna join us on this project to share with us some of her findings. So this was one of the articles that actually inspired this project. It was in Nature magazine, and it was talking about women scientists and the fact that women were being paid less, promoted less, winning fewer grants, and were often leaving research, especially if they had a family. They were leaving research twice as frequently as men who were in the same situation. And so the Australian Institute of Marine Science decided to do something about this, and they decided to put together a coaching program to support women to be more empowered in the workplace and to explore the opportunities that they might have for advancement to C-level executive roles. And they were women in various parts of the organization. So they were definitely in scientific research, both in the field and the laboratory, but as well other functions such as human resources and finance to explore their opportunities across the whole company and to create stronger levels of engagement as well. And the premise of this project was that equality is about choice, and that giving these women choices was really the essence of creating empowered women in the organization. And so a key part of this design was creating an open agenda for women to be able to choose what they wanted to talk about in their coaching sessions. And it was confidential. So the organization didn't give any topics or any or share any subjects that they wanted the women to be coached on. It was all driven by the women themselves to choose the areas that they felt would be the most helpful for them. And the coaching was really focused on them bringing situations that they were facing, challenges that they were facing, and it could be both in the workplace as well as personal. And we were looking at potential opportunities for development for specific actions that they could be taking to improve their situations in that moment. So it was very much driven by asking questions and helping women to find their own solutions to the situations that they were facing. The only exception to that was that actually finding a mentor in their field was a predefined goal for this program. So this was part of what we were coaching them on, was to actually identify a mentor who they could really work closely with, who would be able to share, more from their own experience. And then the coaching was more general in nature to support them in all other areas. And the idea was really to support these women to keep them retained in science and help them with work-life balance and things like that as well, not just workplace-related challenges. So we did 3 workshops in total. The first workshop was to introduce what coaching was and to talk about neuroplasticity, the idea of neuroscience, and to explain that that it was possible to change things like our beliefs about work, about communication, about other people we're working with, about themselves, and that by changing these beliefs, they could actually potentially create a better situation for themselves. So things like habits, you know, if they were used to having habits that weren't working for them, they learned in this workshop that they could change those habits, and that it wasn't, for example, genetically defined, that their brain was a certain way. And for some of these women, even though they are scientists, this was a new concept for them at the time in 2013. The other two workshops were checkup workshops to see how they were progressing in the project, and a final workshop was done to get their feedback and to have a discussion. And then in between, they had coaching sessions, and each person had 6 coaching sessions in total. So this took place over approximately 6 months. And then before and after, we did the research survey to see what they thought about the program and what they wanted to work on, how they were looking at the program, and also coach selection, who they chose to work with, because they had a choice of their coach as well. And so the program outcomes were quite interesting to us. We definitely saw that women developed their capability, their empowerment, their self-worth, their confidence improved, both at home and work. You know, some of them were dealing with very tough situations at home, which made it really difficult for them to focus at work. Things such as, you know, their partner dealing with substance abuse, other things with, you know, childcare. So these kinds of things were impacting on them, and they were allowed to discuss these in the coaching sessions to help them to overcome their challenges. And so the pathway to actually achieving that sense of empowerment was different for every woman who participated in the program, because the barriers that they were facing were different, and the skills that they needed were different. And the power of this program was that we were able to basically meet each woman where she was at the time, with the skills that she had and the challenges that she had, and address those most important things one by one to get rid of those barriers and to help them to be able to focus much more. And so the women that felt, you know, maybe disengaged at work or were cynical about this program, because there were some people that were cynical about the motivation for this program, they became engaged, and they were sharing later that they were really grateful to have this opportunity. So it's important I think, for the organizations that are running these types of programs to communicate very clearly what their intention is, and that the intention is to support and to help them to overcome any barriers, instead of the communicating that maybe there's something wrong with them, that they need to fix something. And that's a very big distinction in introducing this kind of program, making sure that the mindset of people who are joining is a positive mindset, and not a cynical or concerned mindset that they are being viewed as incompetent, and focusing on something that's a benefit for them. So some of the key things that we found were communication challenges, such as negotiation skills. We found, you know, some women weren't comfortable with communicating assertively, so they needed encouragement to be able to speak up about things that they really felt were important, but they were holding themselves back, or they weren't feeling heard in the situation. Setting boundaries with self and others was really important for them, to be able to feel like they had more control over their own situation that they were working in. And then balancing priorities at work and at home was really important as well. So these are some very key issues that we focused on during these conversations. And there were a few different areas that we looked at. So the one that was seen as the most important by the women was personal development, and they felt much more self-aware. So I shared some of the benefits in their own words that the women shared with us in the survey, that they felt they had much greater perspective, personal satisfaction with work, that they felt that it was okay to take a risk, and that they felt more inspiration to deal with change. These were really mostly focused on self-awareness and just understanding that they were competent to deal with the situations that they were running into. Then professional development was really focused on helping them to improve and expand their network and their networking skills. One of the biggest things that I see as a coach, actually, for both men and women, is that people don't invest enough time in their relationships and building their network to be strong enough when they need to rely on it. And that needs to happen in advance. And I see this at all levels. Sometimes at the highest levels of leadership, people become very isolated and they don't have somebody to turn to discuss their challenges. So this was seen as something that was really important in this program for them to expand their networks, to find a mentor, and really to feel more comfortable with networking, and to reach out to people and stay in contact on a regular basis. Now, especially in science and technology, there's a big focus on the technical skills. So this was important because we were really focusing more on relationship building skills and what you call soft skills sometimes, which are extremely important for being able to advance in their career. Then workforce planning, to be able to identify, what was needed strategically and have the space and time to think about these things instead of focusing only on the day-to-day, and getting clear on both personal and career related goals. So time was considered to be allocated to that more, versus when they were just doing this type of thing on their own. They might spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes instead of an hour in a coaching session. And then we looked at actual achievement tools and the tools to help them with communication negotiation. So we looked at some frameworks. We looked at defining values and priorities. A lot of the time in my work, I see that people aren't very clear on their values. And what we mean is what's really driving them, what's really important to them. And those values are really important for decision making and day-to-day prioritizing. And they also weren't used to seeking alternative strategies. So most of the time when I'm working with people, when we're trying to solve a problem, we have one or two ideas already in mind, one or two potential solutions in mind. But to actually push beyond those one or two options, to think about another third option or a fourth alternative option, this was new to them. And the coaching environment created that opportunity to explore more creatively what their options for action could be. And then to identify where they could find information, who they could reach out to for other information, to find links. So becoming much more comfortable with identifying information sources as well. And then finally, with work-life balance, we looked at exploring different strategies for balancing work and life, making more time for personal things and self-care, family and friends. And I highlighted making time when time doesn't seem to be available, because to me, this is, like finding gold, to help someone find time when they just cannot work out how to stop being so busy and to actually be able to allocate some extra time. This is one of the areas that I love to focus on, because we often identify that by improving some skills. So for example, for the women who were managing, people by improving their coaching and mentoring skills, by improving their trust in other people, by being able to delegate more and work more closely with their staff. They were able to free up some of their own time and to find more focus for themselves, and things like ability to spend more time with their family or do some exercise all of a sudden became possible. So this was something that was very valuable to these women. And, because of that, they were able to feel happier and more energized to, show up with more energy in the workplace, as well as, for their families. Hard to measure these things, but we managed to do it in these surveys to see what was the most important to these women. Now, what we found was with decision making and managing change, this was quite interesting because some participants felt more confident with decision making and some felt less confident after this program. And also with managing change, they felt less confident in the survey. So this was something that we felt it would be valuable to see if having a longer program in the future would help the women become more confident about managing change and making decisions, or potentially they become reliant on having a coach on demand for decision making or managing change. So we don't know the answer to that. That's something that would need to be explored in another program to see how decision making and managing change is affected. Just to share with you some potential barriers, a lot of the time, because people do come in so busy, they might be preoccupied with work and personal matters, and they might decide not to participate in the program. They might not make the program a priority. And that's why that very clear explanation as to why this program is being provided, making sure that they understand the value of this. I work with people who are very, very committed when they have a coach assigned to them, and they do absolutely everything to attend a coaching session. And then other people don't value that as much. And having that opportunity up front to explain what this is all about, to make sure that value is built at the beginning, makes a huge difference, I find. Of course, trusting the organization and understanding why this is being done is a very important part of that. To share with you a little bit about the coach matching, what we were looking at were characteristics that people found valuable, the women found valuable before and after. So before, they said that they wanted a coach who had good communication skills, empathy, experience, knowledge, and to be insightful. After they learned what coaching was and that it was much more focused about helping them find their own solutions, they said that those three last variables were very important to them. So being open-minded, being an active listener, and non-judgmental were important instead of being knowledgeable. So that was interesting to see how much they valued being in a space where they don't feel judged and where they can just talk openly about what is the biggest concern to them. And then they also looked at age, gender, personality, and values matching. And they found that after the program, age seemed more important. When matching, gender was also more important. Personality was less important, and values were equally important. And I think when it comes to values, it's that idea of being open-minded and making sure that we don't put our values on the person that we're working with, and instead make sure that they, guide themselves according to their values and what's important to them. So that just brings us to the key lessons that we learned: that control and influence improved, that achievement was not actually defined by advancement, but by the ability to choose their own career path and development opportunities. We found that some women had no interest at all in becoming a C-level executive, and that the stage of life was very important. You know, the ability to be able to improve their work-life balance seemed to us that it was a much more important factor for these women at the stage of life that they were in, instead of focusing on promotion. And we found that coaching was very effective in helping them to build and strengthen their skills, that by helping them have that choice to focus on what was the most pressing for them in each session, that they were able to develop the skills they needed just in time, you know, not in advance, but just when they needed them. And we would do things like practice conversations that they needed to have, difficult conversations that they needed to have, and do a role play in the coaching session and revise how they wanted to say something to help them to improve their influencing skills and deliver the message that they felt was the most important. And that resolving these challenges really helped with their focus and energy to be able to contribute more in the workplace. And so really it was this opportunity to resolve a lot of these relationship and communication challenges that helped them to remove these barriers to be able to contribute more, because it was taking up so much time and space. They were worried about how they were communicating. They were worried about personal relationships, and that was taking up a lot of their focus. And when those things were easier for them to navigate, they had more opportunity to focus on other things. So I wanted to just leave you with this slide, which is Imagine. This is from Central Park in New York. I really love this, this picture because it really got me thinking about imagining that if every woman and every person had the opportunity to work with a coach to overcome their challenges, to improve their skills, and to really focus on what matters most to them, that I see everyone being able to achieve much more of their goals and to contribute much more to the world. So that brings me to the end of my talk. So thank you for listening. And this is just a little picture that I shared in Cambodia 10 years ago at Angkor Wat. If you would like to connect, you can feel free to do so on LinkedIn or by email there. And I think we have only 3 minutes or so in case anyone does have any questions.
Thank you so much, Kasia, for sharing a good topic. And I really like your topic because about empowering women in STEM, especially for science. Okay,
My
now,
pleasure.
okay, now, Kasia, let me read the question from the audience for you. So the first question from Janti, she stated that I found that women still discouraged from surrounding. So to what extent women can encourage from people around them? What can they do to prove that they have enough ability to do things? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that I see is that a lot of the time women spend energy trying to prove themselves. And actually, a lot of the benefit that you can gain is by creating stronger relationships and helping to encourage everyone around you. So other women, other people around you, by being a nurturer, by supporting other people's efforts, by supporting other people's goals, you are proving yourself. The focus is often on ourselves. You know, I need to prove myself. This is more driven, I think, by the desire to prove that we are worth it, that we are worth something. And I think that women need to know that they are worth something. Everyone needs to know that they have great things that they are bringing to the world. But the most powerful thing, the most powerful influence that you can have is by supporting other people, not worrying so much about what other people think about you, because that takes up a lot of energy. And it's more energy that's going into what I call managing perceptions, worrying about others, worrying about how you come across. All of this worrying, it takes up a lot of energy. And it's much more productive to just say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to be so concerned about myself. I'm going to be more concerned about making sure that I show value, making sure that I'm actually doing things that I really want to be focusing on, where I can be my best. And then that is what leads to more success and recognition. So the focus to me is about strengthening relationships, because when you have strong relationships around you, people really see who you are, people really see what you bring. And being a good listener equally to speaking and sharing what's on your mind truthfully is, I think, extremely important. So that was a long answer, and I think it's a really great question that I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to answer that.
Thank you, Kasia, for a very good explanation for the question. I guess I'm sorry that we cannot raise many questions from our audience for you, but and I would like to suggest you to answer those questions in the direct message. And thank you again, Kasia, for today, and I hope you will come to Cambodia again.
I would
And see
love
you next
to. I
time.
miss the food. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
See you
Great to
next
be
time.
here.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, take care.